Hey, welcome to another episode of Chad's Beer Podcast. Sorry, I can't think of a better name than that. Today we're talking to the master of hoppets, better known as Peter. What's going on, man?
Not much. I just drank some Rauchbier for beer school with you, and it was
Yeah,
delicious.
yeah, we both scored this really high. Sorry, I finished my glass, so I don't have anything to show on camera. It's only like a little after 2 in the afternoon here, so I'm switching back to just Lacroix.
I
It's a little
have
early in the day to
extra,
have a.
extra. I have backup Rauchbier on the side, but
Yeah,
lower
I haven't had
strength.
that one. BJCP actually listed that as one of the commercial examples of the classic smoke beer style.
Oh, what's interesting? It's not a Märzen, as far
Yeah,
as I remember, because they also make a Märzen. They make a lager beer and they make a Märzen. That's the thing around Bamberg. A lot of brewers there make a beer they call lager beer, and
mhm,
often ungespundet lager beer, and it's like
mhm.
usually just this slightly darker lager, often fermented without pressure, similar to a Keller beer, and they have that as special, but it's a Rauchbier, and it's 100% smoked malt, so only their
Yeah.
own house smoked malt, and it's pretty damn good. I think it's like the best session Rauchbier, if that is a thing.
In case people aren't familiar, when we say smoke beer or rock beer, Rausch beer, whatever, like the BJCP says that only a smoked Marzen, which is also like one of the Oktoberfest type beers, only that is considered a actual Rausch beer or rock beer, or whatever. Any other style is considered a classic smoke beer or specialty smoked beer. Like the Funky Buddha makes this awesome one. Actually, I don't know if they made it in a while. It's called like Maple Bacon Coffee Porter. So it's like a porter with they add a little bit maple syrup and then they add a little bit of smoked malt. So it's like maple syrup and bacon kind of flavor.
It's like one of the OG pastry beers.
Yeah,
They used to make a lot of stuff like that.
yeah. I mean, that's kind of something I wanted.
Last snow with coconut.
Oh yeah, yeah. I just posted a short of that beer the other day. I've been posting shorts. I try to post a short every day now. It's kind of fun to go back to my old beer reviews and cut like a 10-minute video down into like 45 or 50 seconds, you know? And some of them will get tons of views and some of them don't. I find that my shorts get like way more views on TikTok than they do on YouTube. Are you on TikTok?
No, I'm not that hip.
I'll have to
I'm
show
not.
you. I don't know
No.
if you saw, I did a Beer Tube Academy a few weeks ago where I was showing like how I, cut my old videos down into shorts and stuff. So if you ever want to you can literally double your entire library without doing anything by just going through one of your old random reviews and just cutting it down into a short. Yeah, I'll show you.
I think I saw Joe starting to do it because I think you talked about it on the podcast with him as well.
Yeah, I mentioned that Leo
Because
wants
he
to be on
started doing a few.
it. All right, so here is, in case you're not familiar, here's Peter's channel, The Master of Hoppets. I like this new branding that you've had for a while. Did you design that or did you have an artist do that?
One of my friends is a graphic artist, so I was like,
Mhm,
I need something other than just the stuff I have had in the past, and then he
mhm.
designed that. So I was like, it should be with a Metallica font because
Yeah.
the master of Hobbits. So
Yeah, and you've
and then
been
it's
go ahead.
yeah, and then it's just I've had like what do you call it when you have like a saved file where
Uh,
everything is, so you can just pretty much put things
like a
into it.
template?
A template, yeah. So I have a
Yeah.
template for like thumbnails.
Do you use a PowerPoint?
No, I use. I'm trying to use Photoshop, but mostly I use GIMP, which is a free similar
Oh, yeah,
thing.
I've heard of that one.
But for editing, I use Premiere Pro. Started using that a while back, and it's the best software for any video editing. You can do so much. Like in
Really?
this room I'm in right now, yeah. In the room I'm in right now, there's so much echo because I haven't done anything to try and soundproof the room
Yeah.
yet because we just moved into this house. but a lot of it can be dealt with when you try and sit and tweak with
Mhm.
things. But there's so much to learn with that. So like, I understand why people are educated in just using Adobe or Adobe or whatever it's called
Yeah.
programs.
Yeah, I kinda took, inspiration from your design. So, like how you've been doing, like, you have, like, your logo. It's interesting because, like, 'cause you do use on the side, and I do mine on the it's like, this is Peter's channel, and then this is my channel, and it's like I do like, I have the cartoon logo of me in the bottom right corner. I don't know if you can see this, but under the designing thumbnails, I
Oh,
took your,
yeah, I noticed that,
'cause I wanted to
the
show,
Heineken
like,
one.
what I consider, like, the best beer tubers making the best, um, thumbnails, and I think, like, definitely you're making yours, because like, it's like close up of the beer in the bottle or the can, just in the thumbnail, and then, like, if you hover over it, we can see you and your friends, pouring it and drinking and all that stuff. So, yeah, it's funny, like, remember, like 10 years ago, I basically had the same show as this, where I would just talk to other beer tubers. I just didn't call it a podcast back then. I remember interviewing you back then. I was gonna repost it, or maybe I should at least rewatch it.
Actually, that would be fun to rewatch. I didn't rewatch it.
Yeah, you used to have long hair back then.
Yeah.
Actually, we could sort your hair. Let me go back to your channel. I'll sort from oldest
Oh,
to newest.
the
Yeah, with the
oh,
green.
so much. Yeah, the green
The,
room.
that was at your parents' house.
Yeah, at my mom's place.
Uh, how are they
That
doing?
was my parents.
Yeah.
Fine. I mean, they're doing great. They're really happy they got their first grandkids. My sister got a son like 2 weeks before we had twins here. So they got three grandkids in a row. Like, bam, here you go. Now you have grandkids.
I think I found you because I remember I saw like one of the Simpsons 200th anniversary special or whatever, and like they said like some breweries actually made a Duff beer. So I went on YouTube, I did a search for Duff beer, and your review of Duff beer came up. Like
Oh, that's
that was
edited in what was the
probably
program
Windows
called?
Movie Maker or something.
Yes, Windows Movie Maker, where you could also make a Star Wars crawl.
Yeah.
Remember that?
February 7th, 2010. So about 14 years ago
Yep.
with the Iron
Crazy.
Maiden
Oh my
shirt.
god. Well, I still wear stupid metal shirts, but like I look like a little kid. I was.
Let's do popular. Wow, your Weinstefaner. Wow, 36,000. That's your most popular review. Oh, and
Yeah.
then Axel and Kara. Well, the
Oh yeah, the
Marzen.
Madsen.
Mhm. Again, this old lady, a tour of the Fuller's Brewery.
Yeah.
Wow, we're just like going down memory lane here. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, maybe we should start at the beginning. I mean, although we're like 8 minutes in, like for people that don't know you, like how would you like describe your channel and describe yourself?
Well, I started doing YouTube beer reviews almost 15 years ago, which is insane.
Mhm,
And I started getting into beer in high school. In Denmark, the legal drinking age is 16. So you're introduced to alcohol really early. And my
mhm,
dad was already, he's in the beer geek, but he knew of different beers. And he would like, when we went shopping, if I was going to something where alcohol was involved in beers, in the beginning, I would just drink whatever he had, but then he would introduce me to things, and then through that, like the interest kind of grew. And then I remember my light bulb moment was two beers. It was a Baltic Porter with smoked malt. Maybe that's why I love smoked beers. I don't know.
mhm.
Called Limfjordsporter. I used to send that to beer tubers back in the day when we did trades as extras. 'Cause I wanted everyone to review that beer. Um, and then it was English beer. It was from the Badger Brewery, I think they were called, which
Mhm.
was a golden ale with elderflower. And then when I had those beers, I was just like, wow, beer is so much more than pale lager. And then I just went nuts in high school trying a few different beers and also homebrewing a bit. And then when I was done with high school, I stumbled on YouTube, and YouTube. Well, I knew of YouTube, but I stumbled on people doing beer stuff on YouTube, and I remember you were doing it, and Joe D was doing it. You remember Joe D?
Yeah, he's still around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He does some live streams once in a while,
I think he only
and
does live streams now, but
yeah, yeah. In Albuquerque, and funny enough, I ended up studying in Albuquerque, which is
yeah,
silly. But yeah, Jody L. Harlock, as well. Lee, a lot of those old money beer tubers, also the Hop Rate, but I think that was before the Hop Rate as well. It
yeah,
was that was not that was like four beer tubers or something. That was no one, and I
yeah,
thought it was really interesting because I liked that format more so than Rate Beer, which I was using at the time to log stuff. And then I basically just started it as logging beer as
yeah,
like untapped, a video untapped, really,
yeah,
just to have so people know what it is.
yeah. That was
And
that
then,
was like me too. Yeah,
yeah, so just kind of like checking everything in, but doing video format because I thought it was fun. And then you got to engage with the other people doing videos and stuff like that. And that was pretty much uh,
yeah. There's been a few
how I started.
generations of beer tubers because I don't know how you could break. I think you could break it down to like pre 2008. There's just basically just. I mean, before 2008, 2009, like YouTube was just like this is like the most random website ever.
Yeah.
And things didn't really start to fall into place about 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. I think like in 2012 is when they started letting like anybody become partner, you know? Like if you hit all you do is like hit 1,000 subs and a certain number of watch hours and you were
Good to go. Yeah.
monetized. Like back when I first did it, it was like it was like invitation only, you know? Yeah. The those early days, probably like 2008 to like 2012, it was like me, Jay, you,
Oh,
um,
yeah. Jay.
Mike Beer Barbecue, and then like
Yeah.
even Beer Geek Nation. And I don't know if you
Mike
saw
Beer
my
Barbecue Mark, right?
yeah.
He always did food videos. I love that.
Yeah, and he nuked his whole channel. He still, if you watch Joe D's Saturday night live streams, he's usually on there. But yeah, like he nuked his whole channel, which is kind of a bummer because they were always fun to watch. I guess he got like too many copyright strikes or whatever.
Hmm.
That was the early days of YouTube where you didn't like copyright was nothing because nobody was monetizing their videos back then. And then YouTube or Google put in like the AI auto detect, you know, and it would just pick up like there's some videos of mine where I was running music underneath like way back in like 2009. Like they have like copyright not strikes, but just like a copyright claims like I can't monetize them, but like the video's still up.
Yeah. I've had that happen to some. I remember. So Jakob the Lord of Malt's a friend of mine who was on the channel back then. Um, we used to also try and do some weird, kind of sketchy video. It's like a sketch
Yeah.
type video where we did one where we were doing Bear Grylls, but we were surviving for trying to get beer, and just had an episode that we used. We used like the theme song for the episode from the Bear Grylls Man versus Wild,
Oh
and we
yeah.
got a discovery like strike. It was one of my most viewed videos. I was like, God damn it! And then it was taken off. I remember that. I don't even have the raw file anymore. So
Oh, that sucks. Yeah, it's
yeah,
funny. You must be like one of the only like Danish beer tubers because it seems like, or at least like of the English speaking beer tubers, like if you saw like how last year I was doing like the top 20 beer tubers of the month, and like of the top 20, like 15 of them would all be from England or Ireland or something like that, and then a few Americans on there, and then I know there's this one Polish guy, I forget his name, who gets like insane numbers, but he only does it in Polish. You know what I'm talking about? I know
yeah.
he goes by Brower or something. I'll try to find him.
Brawa Kopira,
Yeah.
or something like that. Thomas Kopira. He's a. I think is he a no? He's not a writer, but he's done like a lot of beer stuff in Poland, and he's done like lots of collaboration beers and all kinds of stuff. He makes videos in Polish. He's like the biggest Polish beer person, I think.
Yeah, he gets big numbers. Where is he? Instead of search for Polish beer review, but I only see oh, that sucks. I wanted to show the people. Oh, here it is. Brower Copra.
I think it's Kopira.
Yeah.
Is the way you say it. But yeah,
Hang on. I got there we go. Need a producer so somebody else can. Yeah, this dude, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, this dude gets insane video views. Let's
How many
see,
followers does he have? Like 100,000 or something almost? Like 100, almost.
162,000. Wow.
And it's all Polish people. That's amazing.
Yeah, he just posted this one 8 hours ago, and it's almost up to 5,000 views. I wonder, like, if all these are authentic though. I wonder if he's using like
I
a
think so. Like Polish YouTube blew up at one point. There's
yeah.
a lot of Polish people, and the Polish people are very passionate about their beer. Like the beer
Mhm.
revolution hit Poland for sure. And there was a one like point I remember where a lot of people were in Denmark scared of what are we gonna do because it's cheaper to make beer in Poland, and when they get as good as Danish breweries, is everyone just gonna buy Polish beer?
Yeah.
But that
The
never
only
happened.
Polish beer that we can get here, or used to be able to get, is the Zywick or Jywick, the Baltic Porter.
Zviech. Zviech.
Is that how you say pronounce it?
Yeah, Zviech. I think that's how you pronounce it. I had a friend
Yeah.
in high school who was Polish, so I know
It's
a little
the
bit.
'cause did you ever hear, like, when it comes to beer, like, there's like three things is like but you can only like any beer, pick any beer, and you can only get 2 out of 3. You can either have um high ABV, low cost, and taste great. So if you have high ABV and it tastes great, it's not going to be cheap. Or if it's cheap and it's high ABV, it's going to taste like shit. Or you know what I'm saying? Like the Baltic Porter gets all three, where it tastes great, it's high ABV, and it's cheap. Name another beer
Ca-
that's like, it's that fits that beer triangle or whatever it's called. I forget what it's called.
Case in
Um,
point, I mentioned like beers that like started it all. I mentioned that porter, Limfjords Porter, from Chista. That's a Baltic Porter, and that's like 10, 15 Danish crowns for it's probably more
mhm.
these days, but around 15 crowns for a bottle of amazing Baltic Porter with smoked malt and a touch of licorice. I think it's how much is that? Maybe $2 a bottle, $2 or something like that, around that, maybe a little bit more. And it's like almost 8%.
Yeah, and I think I did a poll on this a while ago because I always, to me, like my favorite thing about beer is like the little things that you wouldn't think of. And I think like when it comes to just being a beer nerd in general, is my favorite thing is when a low alcohol beer or a beer with like a recipe that you would think like wouldn't work does. So like, I can really appreciate those like, 2 point something, 3 point something percent ABV, like English cask beers, like bitters and things like that. Or like, actually I have one right here. I don't know if you ever had this beer, the
Yeah,
La
Le
Petite
Petit.
Prince from Jester King.
It's a
This is
great
this is
beer.
only 2.9% ABV. And this but it's a wild beer, or however you want to describe it.
The
Mixed
wild
fermentation.
beers or mixed fermentation or
Yeah.
spontaneous beers are in low strength. I've had some really good ones recently. I had one from a producer in the Czech Republic called Metaphor, which was called Pebbles. And funny enough, out of the blue, I got a package from Metaphor and a fan in Switzerland, which was a magnum of one of his blends of a grisette and some lager. He also make lagers as a paternity person. Where I was like, what the hell? And it's like a fairly acclaimed producer, and like you have to have a membership to buy his bottles and stuff. So it's a massive surprise. But I popped that Magnum a few weeks back with my girlfriends and friends, and it was only like 3%, and it was just like so massively drinkable and flavorsome. I was just like blown away. Like, how do you cram this much stuff into a beer of this ABV and that mouthfeel? Like those kind of like wild beers at low ABV can be done. It's probably the style where it works best with low ABV, where you can really do a lot of stuff in terms of flavor. That's pretty much been the style I've been mostly impressed by it in the lower strength category.
Yeah. That's why I have to do a drinking tour to like the UK sometime because I want to go to just a bar in the middle of nowhere, and like if they have like a cask, what's like that
A
Cheswick's, I
mild
think it is. Fuller's Cheswick or something like
Chiswick,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
It's like
Chiswick bitter. That's
3.5 or something.
yeah, Chiswick is the area in which Fuller's Brewery is based, so it's named after that. I remember that being good, but I have like Fuller's has not been easily available in Denmark in years. Ever since
Yeah,
they
I
were
haven't
bought
seen I
by
haven't been able to get a
Asahi.
Fuller's beer in Florida in a long time.
Who bought Fuller's? Was it Asahi or was it Sapporo? I can't remember. But one of
Was
the
it? I didn't even
Japanese,
know.
yeah, they were bought out. So the family that owned Fuller's only own their pubs now because they have a chain of pubs, and then the brewery itself is not run by Fuller's anymore. And John Keeling, who was the brewmaster when we did YouTube, is also
Mhm.
not the brewmaster anymore. He retired. Quite famous British brewmaster. So you remember at all a beer called Prize Old Ale? It
Doesn't
was by
sound familiar.
Fuller's bought a brewery called George Gale's Brewing Company, and they made Prize Old Ale, and then Fuller's took over their production. That's also
Mhm.
like a legendary beer that they used to. I think that's gone as well these days, but it was like traditional real old ale that was partially aged in aged in barrels, and where they blended in old beer into young batches and stuff like. Pretty
Yeah.
amazing that was
Old
existed back then still.
Old ale is, like, hard to come by. In fact, this is one of my complaints about it being in the American craft beer scene now is, like, when I first started, like, the beer store that was in walking distance of my house back when I lived in Albany, um, like, they'd have all the beers sorted by, like, country and by state. So, like, they had, like, a huge English beer selection, Scottish, even, like, Japan and things like that. And, like, you could get, like, a legit, like, old ale, beer to guard, um, and then just, like but here, ever since I moved to Florida, most of my beer I'm getting at, Total Wine, which is, like it's a wine store. It's, like, a huge store. It's, like, the size of, like I'd call it, like, the size of a small supermarket. And, but the beer selection is fairly small, and, like, they have, like, a decent selection of overseas stuff, but it's just all the basic stuff. So, like, all the main Weihenstephaner, Paul Honor, Samuel Smiths, all the Chimay beers, but, like, nothing, like, specialty. So, like, good luck trying to find a beer to guard or a Lichtenhainer, or, what's that Polish smoke beer? Piwo Grodzki or whatever? You know what I'm talking about?
Grodziske.
Yeah. It's a smoked
Yeah,
wheat beer.
yeah. But I think part of it is also because there's so many breweries in America now, and there's so many brewers also trying to replicate these styles. So I think that's why a lot of import has kind of stopped. But there's
Mhm.
still some people like Be United still does a lot of importing. Also, like one of the most legendary import companies from like the 2000s, like Shelton Brothers. They don't exist anymore. They used to bring over so much awesome stuff from Europe. Mickler back
Yeah.
in the day, and Distrise from Belgium, and Nugne Ö when they were like some
Mm.
of the best, and all this. Like they brought in so much crazy Euro stuff that was really good. Also some classic, I think. But yeah, I can't remember. It's a few years ago that that company went under. But
You know what? What's funny is, from, Denmark, your 2 famous brewers are Mikkeller and Evil Twin, and, like, I think they've both relocated to the States in the last few years. So I've actually been able to get a few, like, now they just say Evil Twin New York City on. I don't know if you can get this where you live. It says Evil Twin New York City. It's called This Is
Hygge,
Hig. Yeah.
Hygge.
It's a, let's see if this will show up on.
It's a Danish word.
Yeah. This is a 15% barley wine. This
Boom.
is a full 16-ounce can. I mean, like, I could drink this by myself, but, like, I kinda
You'd be
wanna
splashed.
split this with somebody?
Hygge, by the way, is a very specific Danish word, which is hard to translate. Which means like the feeling of being surrounded by friends in a social atmosphere or an atmosphere you like that's cozy. That's basically what it means. But Evil Twin relocated to the states quite a few years ago. So
Yeah.
Jeppe started. He opened Tust in New York, a very famous beer bar, and for a long time still did contract brewing when he was in the states. But I can't remember how long it was. But a while down the road, he ended up opening his own brewery, which was Evil Twin NYC. And because of
Yeah.
weird rules and laws, he was not allowed to also have be co-owner of the bar. So he sold the rights there. He also had a bar in Denmark, which was called Himmeriget. And even though it was in Denmark, he was not allowed to have that bar, which
Really?
is, yeah, it was stupid. So he had
Wow.
to sell everything. I think it was something like that. And then he now, I think it's him, maybe him and his wife. I'm not entirely sure who owns Evil Twin NYC. I think they make fantastic beers.
Did you ever
They've done
meet
some
him?
really nice stuff. Yeah, a couple of times, but in Denmark. He's usually over for when Cantillon releases their blueberry lambic, because that was originally made for a store he owned in Copenhagen called the Ølbutikken, which means the beer store.
Mhm.
And then later on, it was made as a special thing for Himmeriget, which was his bar. And then now it's just made. He also has a distribution company that sells American beer, so now it's kind of made for them and it's released on their terms. But so yeah, he has that, like, he lives in the States now. He brews in the States. I think he
Yeah.
was very sick of something in Denmark called Jantelov, which is something we have in Denmark, which is an unspoken law. It's not real law, but it's something where it's like you shouldn't believe that you're better than anyone else. And there's a whole like list of things where it's like trying to put you down or put you in your place to be humble.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, especially people who are what are they called? Iværksætter in Danish. I don't know what the translation is. I forgot it. I don't speak enough English anymore. When you start businesses, what is that called in
Mm.
English?
Oh, like entrepreneur?
Yes,
Or
entrepreneur. It's
which
not
actually I
apparently
think
so.
that's a French word.
Yeah, so it's not so good for entrepreneurs or something like that.
Mm.
Whatever. It's a weird thing, but yeah. So Mikkel, his brother, has Mickler, and Mickler had a few breweries in the States. They had one in San Diego and they had one in New York. And they have one in London and they have a brewery in Copenhagen and they contract brew in Belgium. So that was like the whole scheme. But during COVID and the whole, I don't know if you followed the whole situation with the like brewers and people in the beer industry unionizing and speaking out against some bad things happening. Mikler apparently was one of the big players where a lot of shit was happening at bars and stuff.
Mm.
And it was also gotten to a size where it was a big brand and they had loads of bars all over the globe. So they ended up, actually, I think maybe not just because of that, but also because of COVID, uh, closing down most locations. So right now, like, they still have some bars around the world, but all brewing locations are closed besides the one in Copenhagen and the one in London. And they also just sold 20% of the company to Carlsberg.
Really?
So yes,
Yeah, because I
but
remember I just
Mikkeller
wanted
has
to bring
not
up
been making, yeah, some of the beer.
McKellar.
Yeah,
It's pronounced McKellar.
yeah, Mikkeller, if you have to say
Mhm.
it completely right, because the founder is called Mikkel,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
then
I remember he
well,
started a brewery in San Diego, and they had, like, these kinda ugly cartoon
mhm.
labels. So looks like the last one I had from him was really? It's been that long? It says September 2018. This is like a Christmas beer.
But I think it's because if you want to check out the San Diego beers, you have to search for Mikkeller San Diego.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, because that can you showed, that was brewed in
Mm.
Belgium. That was imported. So if you go to search and you put in Mikkeller San Diego, I'm pretty sure you'll find it.
Oh, yeah. Sodermalm, Berlin.
That's all the bars. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
But
remember
if you
a,
just try and search for Mikkeller San Diego,
okay.
because it's a separate, it's put in as a separate brewery. Yeah, there it is, Mikkeller Brewing San Diego.
Oh, yeah, Windy Hill. I think I've had this one. Yeah, I have had this one.
Yeah, so that's some of the stuff brewed in San Diego.
Yeah, I find
But no,
this,
so you're still,
the cartoony IKEA artwork, I don't know, it's kinda to me, it's kinda off-putting.
it's become their branding. It's what they're known. Like,
Yeah.
everyone knows that look. But it's interesting because Mikkeller's been on an interesting, path in the last few years. So
Yeah.
they've definitely changed. They're not marketed as much to geeks anymore. Like, a lot of the stuff they make is made in big bulk, and a lot of it is sold in supermarket. And like,
Yeah.
it's definitely, it seems like it's been gravitating to more of like a a situation where it's going to be more for a bigger audience. Like, there was a big fuss about this 20% buyout, and people like, this is going to be like Beavertown. In a few years, it's going to be 100% Budweiser, Carlsberg owned, and like blah blah blah. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. I think they put on like the best beer festival in the world, which is amazing to go to. They've had they've made some of the best beers to come out of Denmark in the past. But I think like at the moment they're not producing beers that excite me as much as it would have in the past.
Yeah, I remember like the Beer Geek bacon, or the one that was made with the Weasel, the Beer Geek Brunch Weasel, or
Yeah,
whatever it's called. I think that was one of the beers that put him on the map. And didn't he have like
yeah,
one, like 1,000 IBU IPA or something like that?
yeah, yeah, yeah. 1000 IBU IPA. Beer Geek Breakfast was the first one. Then the
Hmm.
spin-off Beer Geek Brunch Weasel, which was with the Vietnamese Weasel coffee, one of the most expensive coffees in the world. And then I guess like some of the things we see with beer these days with obscure ingredients and all this stuff, it was like the starting grounds for some of that stuff was really going on in Mikkeller. But they also made some really cool things. One of the best beers they made was called Sauvignon Blanc, which was
Hmm.
inspired by Orval, which was a Brettanomyces Belgian pale ale with Nelson Sauvin dry hopping. It was fantastic. Like I wish they'd bring back that beer. That was so good. I don't think they make it
Yeah, I
anymore.
just remember like McKellar and Evil Twin, because like they were gypsy breweries for a while, and like it wasn't like they would have one. They didn't have like a flagship beer, because they would just keep going from brewery to brewery to brewery, just like making different beers. And like if you look them up on Rapier or Beer Advocate, they had like a couple hundred or 1,000 different beers. Like, oh my god, like how can you even like keep track of that? Like if you had brewed like that many beers, like you would forget about them after a while. Like somebody would come to you and be like, remember that beer that you made in 1994? I'd be like, no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's a maybe part of the mentality around beer that's still a big part of beer is ticking. People want to try the next new thing.
Yeah, the tickers.
And it has to be bigger, it has to be bolder, it has to be more, more, more. And that's one of the biggest problems with craft beers. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be more. Like at one point I was like, a stout couldn't be thick enough and rich enough. These days I'm like, there's also something that's too rich.
Yeah.
Like I'm gravitating more backwards to where I started in craft beer. A lot of people in the industry here say like it's like a wheel, and it starts spinning, and then you go through all these crazy things, but at one point you're going to end up back at lager or bitter or brown ale,
Yeah.
whatever you saw it out in the beginning. And I see that like some of the beers that excite me the most these days are fresh lagers from Franconia and stuff like this. West Coast IPAs. Like I still
Yeah.
really love a good hazy and a good barrel aged stout, and once in a while a good pastry stout. But I don't seek it out the same way I used to.
Yeah, I was saying this on some of the previous reviews, because basically that's what I was getting at, is because like once you get into beer, and especially like if you get into home brewing, and like you actually once you learn, just like, you know, I don't know much about like the actual chemistry, microbiology. I just know like enough, you know, especially like what shouldn't be there. Like for professional brewers, like you go to college and actually, learn all about the chemistry and microbiology. But if you're just a home brewer doing it for fun, you just need to know like, just the basic 101, or like if you have like an off flavor, like what probably caused it. And but the same thing kind of goes like with recipes and ingredients too, where you start to realize like the craftsmanship that goes into, or like maybe not just craftsmanship, but like the quality control that goes into making the smaller beers. Kind of like what we were saying at the beginning of the show, is like where I want to go to England and have like a 2 or 3% cask beer. To me, that's like if it's actually flavorful and doesn't just taste like they took a beer and just watered the hell out of it, you know, like I can actually appreciate, like now I can even appreciate like macro lagers for what they are. I mean, it's not the kind of beer I want to drink all the time, but every once in a while I will, if I'm at Walmart or something, I'll pick up a 4 pack of PBR for like $5 'cause it's so cheap. And it's
It's
just like an
funny you
easy
mentioned
beer
it.
to
I was
drink.
like, once in a while, I love an ice cold PBR. Like it
Yeah.
used to be sold here, not anymore. But once in a while, it's actually quite nice.
Yeah, and actually, it's actually Carlsberg has gotten pretty big over here lately. Like, I sell them in
Okay.
these slim cans. They look almost like Red Bull. like those slim Red Bull cans. They call it a Danish Pilsner. Like, is there? I don't know if like that's considered a recognizable style. Like, I don't know what is Carlsberg doing different than like Pilsner or Kel or like one of the German pills.
I think like it's just a bit of marketing because they're Danish. But one of the cool things about Carlsberg is like it's the biggest reason why we have modern lagers the way we have, because
Hmm.
Carlsberg made the patent for the yeast free. Everyone could use it. Everyone could do whatever because they were, a big spokesperson for like the beer industry and whatnot.
Hmm.
So it's like even though they were a big brewer, they were part of the reason why fizzy yellow beer is so big and still is. So it's a big part of it. But it's interesting. I did not know that they were really targeting the American market. I know there is like what evil man, my English, even evil twin tongue twister,
Yeah,
uh, has done a Danish lager now, which they called Greenhouse Green,
yeah. I've had a few
inspired
of
by
those.
Tuborg Green. It's pretty
Actually, I
like
have.
green. They're pretty good, the greenhouse beers, I think. But I don't
Yeah, I
know
just
if
had
there's like
one. This one says,
German pills, yeah.
yeah, and it said age on American oak fooder. They had a couple of them. Actually, I can do a search here. Search for Evil Twin. Oh yeah, they did this quadruple hazy IPA. I guess he has this whole series of beers named after his cat. The Greenhouse Imperial Lager. This was also aged in fooders. And like I had this, I got these on Tavor, it's this beer shopping app that I use.
Yeah, I
And
know it.
the two greenhouse ones, even though they say aged on oak fooders, like I got like no woody quality out of them at all. I feel
Yeah,
like if you're gonna age in fooders, like you should get like at least bread or something.
I think usually with the case of like traditional oak aging of lagers, it's soft, delicate flavors you get because
Mhm.
the lagering time is not more than maybe 4 weeks. Like oftentimes they're lagered in the tanks. It's maybe 4 to 8 weeks max. You don't pull a lot of wood flavor from that. And then, as you said Brett. That could also be a part of it. And I think in most cases, that's not something you'd want unless you're trying to do like a breaded pilsner, which can be really
Yeah.
nice. But
What
yeah,
I just don't get what was the point of what's the point of lagering fooders, and then also what's the point of like marketing it as that if you're not going to get any woody or wild character out of it? I mean, they could have just called it like if I didn't know that those beers were aged in fooders, it would just taste like it was just regular steel
but
tank.
don't you think they would be easier to sell if it said they were aged in oak instead of saying it was just an aged lager?
I
I
mean, I
think it's
guess 'cause Evil Twin and McKellar to me have always been like those two hipster breweries of just like and like Dogfish Head, how they're not going to do like anything to style. It's just going to be, or we're going to make something, you know, it's sort of like a familiar style, but we're gonna put our own twist on it, to like do a imperial pilsner and then age it in oak fooders. I don't know that like that's how.
but I think
Go
there's
ahead.
some subtlety to it as well with the oak aging of lagers. Like you can definitely get some character from it. But it's interesting. Also, I see a lot of people when they've been to Germany, they preach about how the German lagers are best from the wooden barrels, and they talk about how it tastes more vibrant and you get soft
Mhm.
wood flavor and stuff like that. That's all in your imagination because these wooden barrels are coated with like a plaster on the inside, so it's not in contact with the wood, so you don't have any contamination from the wood. So it's
Right.
actually just because they get to drink the beer really fresh. That's the reason why it's really great. It's not because it's actually in contact with wood, because then a big like or not big, but some of these fairly big family-run breweries, like one of the more famous one, Augustina, for example, in Munich. Like if they had beers they put in oak barrels and shipped out locally to serve, like quality control would be crazy and they would get so much beer returned to them. That needs to be some kind of way to control that. And that's by putting this plaster on the inside. It's a bit like tar or something like
Mhm.
that. Schlenkerla also has beer they put in those barrels. But the big thing about it is like those beers are filled, shipped out, served. So they're super fresh. and that's why it's amazing. Like
Not that,
beer, aging beer can be fun, but most beer is just best when it's really fresh.
yeah, like the Keller beer, like
Yeah,
the BJCP actually has a separate listing for Keller beer, aka Land beer, aka Zwickel beer, which is it's very, very, very close to like a Munich Helles lager, except it's like I guess the only difference is like that it's you know packaged a lot earlier. Is that it, or like it's wood aged, or
it's such a complicated matter, and the fact that this is grouped together is because people haven't done enough research.
yeah,
Because if you actually go to Bamberg and you travel around the countryside, you'll find that most brewers they have a name for whatever they're doing, and you'll see a lot of different names. You'll see Zwickelbier, as you mentioned. You'll
Mhm.
see Landbier. You'll see Kellerbier. You'll see Ungespundet Lagerbier. All these different names, and basically what's in common is generally that they're lagered for less time than like Helles lager, for example. They're unfiltered, so they don't pass them through like a Kieselguhr filter, and they're also lower carbed. Some of them, especially if they're called ungespundet, because that means it's made without pressure. So it's interesting. They have something in common, all of them, but like almost all breweries do their own version of it. So sometimes you'll go to a brewery and you have an ungespundet lager, and you're like, it's mentioned
Mhm.
as a Keller beer online, but it's amber colored. And then you go to another place and it has a Keller beer that's like pale yellow. And I think BJCP also don't they differentiate between like pale and amber Keller beers?
Yeah. Sorry, they can't really see it, but I they moved the BJCP moved Keller beer to the historical beer section on the last guidelines revision because I remember the 2015 had them just like with the other German lagers. Yeah, because there was like a pale and like an amber Keller beer.
Yeah.
Keller means
I
like cellar, right?
Yeah, it is, and it means it's beer from the cellar, really. So it's
Yeah,
pulled
or it's
directly
like
from the cellar and served.
unfiltered.
Yeah, often it would be served at like so in if you go to the area of Franconia, which is where these beers are from, the Calabias, a lot of breweries would have had these cellars built into sandstone hills because that was the best place to cool your lager and do lagering. And then on top of that, you'd build a beer garden because it was a great place to plant trees and sit in the shade and drink the beer. So there was where you served Kellerbier, beer from the cellar. That's what it means.
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah,
basically beer served really fresh from right below you, and you drink it fresh, and that's how it's enjoyed.
it's
And it's a
basically
uniquely Franconian thing
yeah, it's like the
originally.
cask equivalent of lager, right?
Kind of, yeah. It's
Yeah.
almost like the cask equivalent to lager beer. And then there's
Mhm.
all these spins and different kind of small variations. Like Zwickelbier is supposedly similar but lighter in flavor and ABV, and it's named after a siphon the brewmaster will use to pull samples. And it gets into lager obscurity
Yeah,
with the world of Keller beer and
yeah.
Stickler beer and whatnot. But it's really interesting and they taste really good. Like if you ever get to go to Bamberg and the area, like some of the best lager beer experiences is going to be there at the brewery. It's really fresh.
Yeah, I wanna try that. Yeah, so kinda catching up, with you for it's been a while, even though it's funny because like, we haven't done this in a while, but, like, we talk on Instagram or Untappd or something like that, every once in a while. And I remember, you know, kinda what we were talking about towards the beginning of the show is, the early days of BeerTube and stuff. And I remember you went to college at what was it, Arizona or New Mexico?
New Mexico.
Yeah. Was that c where you were going for what was your major back then?
So my
You didn't really have one.
journey, well, I did have a major. I was a English major,
Oh,
and
like me.
oh, well, being an English major in Europe, they recommend that you do an abroad trip, England, what in an English speaking country, and our university had like partnership universities where we could be sent over and not have to pay tuition, and they would send over a student and they would not have to pay tuition because in Denmark, university,
Student
college,
exchange.
school is
Yeah.
yes, so it is in exchange. So school is free here; it's paid through taxes, so you don't pay anything. So I got to go there. I applied to New Mexico, and back then, the reason why I was applied to New Mexico to Albuquerque, UNM, was because I knew it was closest to California because I wanted to go
Mhm.
to California and explore the California beer scene.
That's
So already
still
then you was thinking like,
pretty far.
hmm, it is far, but it was closer than Iowa
Oh,
or
yeah.
North Dakota. Or was it South Dakota? It was like it was not like that interesting places we could go. So I went there, and I that was in 2012, and I was there for like 7 months or so, and it was such a great experience. It was fun to be just pushed into American culture. I was thinking like, you know, the American Pie party, cake stands, all that stuff was just in the movie, but it was pretty pretty much like it, and the solo cups and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was an amazing experience, but it was also interesting because it was being smack dab in the States, drinking an American beer, doing YouTube. So like that was the first time I had like Heady Topper and stuff like that because people would send it to me because now I was in the States and people were like, oh, I'm gonna send you a box of this, I want to send you a box of that. I got to try like fresh Alpine beers and like some of those more renowned breweries back then, which was like so amazing. Like I drank so much good beer when I was there, and then I also discovered some awesome local breweries like La Cumbre, which was probably the best brewery in Albuquerque at the time. They were very well known for their elevated IPA, which
Mhm.
is they I think they still do it to this day, which is kind of like similar to the West Coast style, but it was a little bit more modernized. As far as I remember, it was not all like you remember the old school West Coast IPAs where they were big on crystal malts as well.
Yeah, and they were, like, super bitter, like
Yeah,
Ruination and Pliny.
yeah. This was still bitter, but it was going a bit away from the crystal malt, and
Mm.
it was just an amazing beer. And then from there, I did a month of traveling California, which was dope. I got to meet up with like some of the OG beer tubers, like Ryan Rashan, for example, and I got to. Do you remember Winton?
Yeah.
Yuichi Tuba?
Yeah, I was just
Yeah.
talking about him the other day.
Ah, funny. Well, yeah, I got to meet up with so many people, and then I have family in California in San Luis Obispo, so I also went there. And then, funny enough, I was in San Luis Obispo the time of the first Firestone Walker Invitational Beer Festival, so I of course also went to that. So it was a pretty amazing trip, and it was so fun. Like I've been back since, but I the last time I was in the States was in 2018. But there's so many places I still want to visit over there. Like
Yeah.
I was into food before, but I've become a massive foodie, and like I love to cook
Mm.
myself. So like I'd love to visit like New Orleans or like Louisiana and some of like the hot Texas, go to eat barbecue, things like that.
Yeah.
But back then my major in college was English and media studies was my minor. And in Denmark that basically means you're going to be doing teaching of sorts in mostly high school. Fairly
Yeah,
well
that's
paid
funny
job
because that's
here.
what I wanted to do, and actually, when I first started this channel, I was an English major at University at Albany. Yeah, and I
Oh.
did the student teaching too, and, like, I hated it. And
Hmm.
then, so I just went to, ITT Tech and got a 2-year degree in computer networking, so I worked in IT starting about 2011 up until, like, 2018, and I worked for, GE when I was in New York, and then I moved to Florida, and so I worked for Publix and Microsoft for a few years. And, yeah, I'm just trying to remember because I don't know. It's funny, you and I talk, but, like, I still lose touch because, like, so, like, you went to, school for English back about 10 years ago, and then did you go to school in Denmark for brewing, or did you just learn it from home brewing?
Yeah, so when I came back, I was homebrewing on the side of all the YouTube stuff, but sporadically. So it was, I'll do some brewing for a while, I'll be into it for a few months, and then I would be into something else, or what?
Mhm.
Like I would take a break from it. So I did a good amount of brewing, also with Jakob, the Lord of Malts, who used to be on the channel. We were the ones who brewed. I think we even did a couple homebrew videos, not a lot. But then when I was done with uni, in Denmark, when you're looking for a job, we have social security for people who look for jobs. So you get like if you are part of like if you it's kind of like an insurance. So if you
Mhm.
pay the monthly fee for the insurance, you will have a specific amount of money every month, so you can actually survive when you don't have a job. So it gives you time to look for a job, and usually have 2 years until that runs out. But when you're doing this and you're looking for a job, you're also asked to do an internship. And they wanted me because I, prior to my degree, also done a bit of work in public school. And they were like, "You should go to public school." I was like, "No, I don't want to go to public school, but I love beer. So maybe I could apply to this local brewery and I could do something there." And they were like, "If you want to." So I went to this local brewery in Aalborg, where I'm originally from, and I sent them an application for an internship. And then I had a meeting there, and I had the internship. And the internship is 3 months. And then after the internship was over, I was offered a full time job and a degree in brewing because it's a private school in Denmark. So I was like, yes, and that's been like my gateway into
did
commercial
it
brewing.
did it come easy to you? Because like to actually be a professional brewer, like I said, you need to know like a little bit of microbiology and chemistry and stuff like that. And it's like if you have like a left brain, they call it like difference between like left brain personality, right brain personality. People, like people who are creative versus people who are like into math and science.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely in the creative side. uh, so a lot of things. But you know what's weird is nothing really came hard. And I think it because I came from a background where I knew so much of different things about beer already. Like going to the brewing school here, I think a lot of the things I did not know was a lot of formulas and math. But I can tell you, doing pro brewing these days, there's a lot of other ways you can do these things with like apps and online
Yeah,
things. Like it's not too often you calculate things. You have like, and every brewery is different. Like the way you work, the way things are constructed, and everything. Like, of course, you need to know basic chemistry. You need to know basic biology. But I think like you can be really good technical, but you all like I think the best brewers are brewers that are a mix of both the creative and the technical, where you get really technical and geek out about weird shit like pH or whatever, and
yeah.
also where you're creative. And I think I have a foot in a little bit. I don't know. It sounds like I was calling myself a great brewer, but like I've got a foot, kind of a bit in both camps. Maybe more towards the creative side, um, but it's what I love about it is like ever since I also got into cooking, it was kind of like the reason why I got into cooking was there was a lot of things I wanted to try I couldn't get locally. It's like I'm gonna buy a smoker and make barbecue because I can't eat barbecue in my city. So after being New Mexico, and then I think it's because I'm a geek, so I geeked out and I researched and all these things on how to do it. And beer was a bit the same, but then I also just went to school for it. So I still
Right.
have that and then also because I'm still crazy enough, really passionate about it, I have that strive for, I don't know if I want to say perfection, but just constantly learning and becoming better. Like I don't like to rest on my laurels and just be like, oh, that's going to be fine. That's how it's going to be. Like if I can improve something, I want to improve it. And that's been kind of like a big thing of my brewing career. Like if I look at the beers I created 5 years ago to the ones I make now, I
Mhm.
think the first ones were nowhere near as good as the ones I do now. Both because I know more of the science behind everything and whatnot, but also experience in brewing, and then just just getting into that willingness to learn because learning and figuring out like when something clicks, I love that. Like that's
Yeah.
amazing. Like something you tried to figure out for a while. It's like, yes, I know how to do this on this system now and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You work for it's called Bad Seed Brewing.
yes.
That's it. I was gonna show the screen. Here. Yeah. It's funny because like it's badseedbrewing.dk. Did you name the brewery or was that already the name?
No, so the brewery was found by a good friend of mine who I used to work with in
Mhm.
Aalborg called Frederick. Frederick.
Mhm.
So he's a big fan of Nick Cave, if you know the musician, and he has a band called Nick Cave and the Bad Seed. So the name is a bit of an homage to him, and also because Frederick himself has kind of been a little bit of like the
Uh,
bad seed. I guess he could relate to the bad seed mantra throughout his life.
It cracks me up though, like they put it in English though. You know,
You'd be surprised how many Danish breweries are named English names.
yeah.
Most Danish breweries are named English names,
Isn't there
especially.
is there a Metallica song called Bad Seed?
I don't think
Yeah.
so. Maybe there is.
Yeah, Bad Seed. It's on
Holy shit! You
whoops.
know more about Metallica than me.
It's on the Reload album.
That's why I
Yeah.
was never into Load and Reload. But makes sense. That is a different album, way different than the original. It could be inspired by Nick Cave.
I wanted
Uh,
it's funny because I meant to talk about music with some other beer tubers and I forgot. It's you know, anybody who knows you, I mean, just knowing off the name of your show, The Master of Hoppets is a Metallica reference, and like you pretty much always wear like metal t-shirts. I think you're wearing one right now. I don't know if you do you use Apple Music at all? Because I have, and it's like it's a good way to get into bands you never heard of. And I started listening to G- Gent or Degent style metal. I guess it's the guy from Meshuggah kind of invented this. I assume
ah,
you must be a big Meshuggah fan.
I actually haven't listened that much to Meshuggah at
uh,
all. I'm still a big metalhead. I think like once you're a metalhead for at least a lot of people, you're in it for life. So, but I don't
yeah.
listen to like a lot of Metallica these days. Like there's 3 albums from Metallica I still listen to, and that's like Kill 'Em All, Master of Puppets, and Ride the Lightning. That's about it. But it's like rare. But what I
Mhm.
listen to a lot like these days is also I've been going into different things with metal, but I'm going back to something I really was into when I was also in high school and stuff, which is melodic death metal, especially like the Scandinavian sound of it.
Mhm.
And I even, funny enough, the T-shirt I'm wearing is from a local band called Mercenary. And you remember my intro back in the day with all the like graphics that was flipping around? It was playing metal in the background before the Master of Puppets one, or after the Master of Puppets one. It was
Maybe.
insanely long, and then it was followed by the Beer Geek Nation stuff.
Oh,
Uh, but that was like a snippet of a song from this band, which is local. And I was like, I used it, and I was like, "Can I use it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think our label will notice you." I was like, "Okay, thanks."
do you know if you give me a specific episode, I could bring it up.
Try and actually the first Evil Twin New York City. Oh no, Evil Twin. Uh, something New York City hotel room. Evil Twin
Okay,
hotel room. Let's see if I can find it. It was like outside in the snow.
I just did a search for Evil Twin hotel room. I think I remember what you're talking about.
I found it. Review 247. No,
Yeah,
that was not it. That was not it. We need to be further.
there's a couple of them.
I've done a
Soft
couple,
Dookie,
yeah. Soft Dookie, yeah. Wet Dream.
Cat Piss. Well,
Fantastic names, huh?
was this the one you're talking about? Looks like you're in the snow here.
Yeah, but it was not that one. It was not that one. I can't. When did I change into that intro? I remember people were telling me my intro was too long. And I was like, no, but I love it because it features this music.
Yeah, I gotta mute that, or else I'll get copyright strike on this video.
Oh, here it is. Evil Twin without you, I'm nothing. Review 442.
Oh, here we go.
Remember that intro?
Uh, vaguely.
Yeah, I was so proud of that intro. I thought it was so cool back in the day, and it featured all of the beers we drank and stuff like that. It was way too long. It was like 50 seconds, almost a minute, and then it would transition into the Beer Geek Nation intro after that. But in that intro, it's one of the uh, opening tracks from one of this band's album from Metamorphosis. What's the
Yeah,
album called? I can't remember the name of the track actually.
I need to
Through
get
the Eyes of the Devil, I think.
a new intro montage like that too, because like I haven't had one. I haven't had it upgraded in a long time because I have the original Brental Floss Chad's Beer Reviews theme song, and a fan of mine did like that metal cover version of it, which I kind of like better. It's a little bit longer, but I remember a professional. Remember, they're still around. Reckless Eating.
Yeah.
I haven't watched them in a long time, but I used to watch them in their early days. And like, I think they even had like a Facebook group or something. I was friends with all those guys on Facebook. And the Richard dude who did like all their graphics and stuff, like he made that opening montage for me. And that's going back a long time. But
I remember that. That
um,
was a really good montage. That opening was
yeah,
awesome.
I need somebody to make a new one of those because it's just been too long. And like, I mean, I don't know how to use Adobe Premiere or anything like that. Like, I just use like a real basic program because I mean, I don't really do like a whole lot of effects and things like that. So there isn't a whole lot of reason for me to use like Premiere or Final Cut Pro or any of those um, s- uh, editing software. But anyway, man, we've just been like rambling. I didn't come up with like usually what I should do is come up with like a list of questions for each person. I just like kind of like never get around to it. I think it's more fun to just kind of like go on the fly. Um, but I mean, so like I think this is my fifth episode of this new show, and I kind of like kind of ask everybody more or less the same questions. Kind of like I don't know what the beer scene is like here or there, but like here, it seems to have contracted. We are kind of touching on this earlier in the show. Is like, you know, when I go to Total Wine, like, there's kind of like two sections of just kind of like the new releases, like the seasonal releases, and then there's just kind of like the year round stuff, like it's kind of like in the back of the store, and that's like all collecting dust and dirt, the stuff people don't buy anymore. And it seems like all the new stuff now is just basically like three styles: hazy IPA, pastry stout, and fruited sours. Is that how it is over there now? Is like everybody just wants those three beers now?
Yeah. It's crazy. Haze is king. Haze is king. You have to brew hazy, otherwise you don't have a business. Um, but we have really been trying to push for other things where I brew at Bad Seed. We make a lot of lager. We make both modernized and classic lager. We're trying to bring
Mm,
West Coast back. We're trying to do a bit more of the modernized revamped version that's going on at the moment in California. You should try and get Joe to send you some like North Park or something like that because they make like more modernized West Coast beers that are just insanely good. So we're trying to push that, and we're definitely seeing a lot of interest in it, which is really cool. It's like the hazies is still like we just brewed a double dry hop hazy IPA, and it sells really quick because it's a double dry hop hazy. But we're seeing a lot of these West Coast beers, for example, are starting to sell good, and our lagers also sell really well. So I think there is an interesting like like there's a lot of people I think a lot of people when they come into beer these days they go into haze and they go into pastry and they go into uh, smoothie sours, all this stuff because it's
yeah,
so much more easy accessible. It's sweet, it's really fruity. It's not bitter, it's like it's really easy to get into. So I think a lot of people will start there and then slowly gravitate into other things. But I think one of the biggest problems with like this is like it just diminishes so much other amazing beers. A lot of the people that get into beer these days, they try their first Rauchbier like we reviewed. Like most people would give this like a 2 on Untapped, and that's just not fair. Like if you have this and you've only drunk sweet, juicy, hazy beers
yeah.
or pastry beers, you're gonna be like, "What the fuck is this? Is this even beer? What? It's disgusting!" Like because you don't have the palate for it yet, and you're gonna trash something that is legendary. Like you see it a little bit, especially if you. I can't being a brewer, I can't help but look at Untapped, and you come across it once in a while, and like it's hard because it's a market dominated by these things. So like beer is slowly becoming something it's not, which is or it has become. Like I've seen, especially you guys in Florida, you make a lot of weird sours with soda and all kinds of stuff.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, the hard
but I
seltzers.
also think beer should be fun. Beer
Yeah,
shouldn't only be die hard old men who's like I want my Rauchbier. Like it should be fun as well because it's not wine. It's not
yeah,
highbrow. It's not like Feinschmecker, as you say in Danish. It's and German, I think. It's the people's drink. So it's okay that we have the haze and all that. But as you've seen with other things in beer, it might just be a phase. Beer like it goes like this with whatever is going on. But the one thing that persists is lager.
Yeah.
Lager is still around. Lager is still the most consumed product, even though we've got
Yeah,
all
and,
this
and
heritage.
lager is kind of a vague term because I mean, there's like so many different
Yeah.
styles you
Of
could put
course.
under
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it depends what you. When most people say lager, they're gonna they mean like some kind of pale lager,
Yeah, yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
Not
But
nothing really
no, but
special.
I still think these other things are very popular. And I think they're fun to brew. I love especially brewing like big stouts. Before going on the podcast today, I finished up a big stout that I brewed for aging in Willet bourbon and Willet rye barrels. And
Hmm.
that's like where you just like you really have to be really technical with these beers and look at how you can construct a beer that's really rich and decadent and big to last the aging time in barrels. And you have to be really careful with fermentation because there's so much residual sugars and stuff like that that can screw up your fermentation. So there's like that's why it's really fun to brew because it's really challenging. Like with lager, it's just challenging in a different way. So I think there should be room for all this stuff, and you can think what you want about different things. But I really hope we're not going to get at a point where like we're going to be in like everyone is in separate camps as like I'm the lager drinker, I'm the hazy drinker. Like we're like
Yeah.
because it's almost starting to go towards like that where people look at people weirdly because they drink a style that they dislike, and it's just like at the end of the day it's just beer. So I really don't hope we're going to see too much of that like tribalism, I think it's called, which is a
Yeah.
human thing to want to do. But like I just what I want is like people appreciate beers for what they are, really like
Mm.
appreciate for what it is. If it's a hazy and it's a great hazy, yes. If it's a
Mm.
great brown ale and it's a great brown ale, yes. And the
I
same for
know.
Alpia and everything else.
Did the non-alcoholic beer blow up over there too? Because like now, non-alcoholic beer is like the next hazy over here. Like everybody wants 0.0 or 0.05 ABV beers now. I don't get it because like when I was a kid, up until a few years ago, like near beer was always like just like the butt of all jokes in beer, and like now it's like the trendiest thing. It's like where did this come from? Nobody knows.
It's been building for a long time. It's funny because every year, the past 5 years, everyone has been, or like a lot of beer writers and stuff in Denmark has been like, next year is going to be the year of the alcohol-free beer, and the market has really expanded. And like a lot of brewers has tried to chime in on it. Actually, Mikkeller is one of the best producers of alcohol-free beers in Denmark. They discovered a yeast to use that does not with the help of the brewery, I think that they brew at in Belgium, that does not produce much alcohol but ferments it into other things. And
Hmm.
some of that's like the drinking in the sun beers. I think that some of them were called wild or weird weather ales, where it was different types of styles. They were really good for what they were, alcohol-free beers. And some of the alcohol-free beers you can get are really good, but the difference is still like I still think there is a big you can brew a good alcohol-free beer, but to be honest, I would rather skip drinking beer than drinking alcohol-free beer most times. Like if I was in
Hmm.
a situation where I couldn't drink, I would have something that wasn't beer because I would prefer the flavor of like a full strength beer. But maybe that's
Yeah.
just because I'm a beer geek and the crowd that is this is appealing to is a different one.
Yeah. I was talking
You
about
know?
this with Darwin the other night, and he's just saying like the younger generation like just isn't as sold on beer as we are, like the millennials and the Zoomers. Because I'm more Gen X. You're probably more millennial, and it's like
Yeah.
the millennials and the Gen Z or whatever. I think a lot of that also has to do with like the proliferation of the legalization of weed. Because like now people can just get, and actually, I mean, even here in Florida, you can get, you know, certain types of legal weed. Like these are 5 milligram gummies, and like it's just like the way the law was written. It's like if you can get the THC from hemp and not from actual marijuana, like I don't know, it's a whole complicated story. But they have legal THC over there.
No. Marijuana,
Yeah.
hash, whatever is illegal in Denmark. It's legal
Really?
to sell hemp products. So hemp
Yeah.
products are legal, but they have to be without THC, but they can be with CBD. So CBD is legal, but you won't have any,
Yeah.
effect from that if you're looking for a buzz or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's been illegal for many years. But there's been a lot of talk about the legalization of it in terms of controlling, the criminal side of it. Because if you have legislations and rules and stuff like that, it can be made into a profitable business. So there's been talks of it, but it's never been something. I think there was a lot of split camps with it because it's still a very, very touchy thing here. Like I know in like California, for example, and a lot of places in the states where it's legal, it's looked upon quite differently. Here, it's still like the devil's lettuce, where people are like you're gonna go blind if you smoke that. It's like what what your parents will say, or they're gonna be like you're gonna get a psychosis if you smoke it. And
Yeah.
so I think it's something about the mindset as well. So no, yeah, it's not legal here, and it's
Hmm.
not had any like the CBD products are kind of growing. I don't think they're booming, but they are there. Uh,
I got some CBD gummies here too. Come in a
ah,
variety of flavors. I just bought this yesterday. It was really expensive though.
hmm,
$60 for this.
damn,
That's $2 a gummy.
that is
Oh, it had like a
craft.
weed. I can taste the dank. You can taste that dank flavor to it.
That's funny. It's funny. Dankness is one of those flavor descriptors I've used a lot, and I think some people have thought I was a pothead sometimes, but I've never been a pothead. Like I've
which
smoked weed
hops?
like 3 or 4 times in my life.
Which hops are the most dank? Simcoe?
Yeah, Simcoe is quite dank. I think Citra, also some of the Southern Hemisphere ones, like Nelson and stuff like that, they can be
Mhm.
quite dank. I think they're also more dank in with hops. It's so interesting because it's so specific from lot to lot. Like you'll have one crop of Nelson, for example, that smells a specific way, and then you get a new
Mhm.
crop, and they're just like massively different. And like the whole crop selection thing, which is big in the States, it's like very much still a US thing. If you're in Europe and you want to crop select great hops, you need loads of volume. So most European brewers, they just get the leftovers from the States.
Yeah. Do you get most of your ingredients do they grow hops and malts in Denmark or do you have to import them from Germany?
So there's a lot of malt grown in Denmark, and we have a couple maltsters. We use one of them for our organic beers because it's organic local malts. It's from the north of Denmark. The company is called Gyrup, and they make some really nice malts. They even make a smoked malt. Actually, we've talked about trying to use that in our Rauchbier at some point.
Mhm.
But yeah, otherwise, like hops is not the climate is not that great for hops. You can grow them in your garden and whatnot, but you're not going to have the great yield. But I think things are going to be changing because of climate change. Because the hops from Germany in recent years, it's interesting to watch the alpha acid content on those crops because it is just like going down and down and
They're getting
down.
less bitter.
Like they're getting less bitter and they're getting I don't know the exact composition of each how the different hops and how they are. There's myrcene and all kinds of different things in hops. I can't remember the exact lots, but one of the things you in general see when you have the bags is like the alpha acid just keep dropping and dropping and dropping because of
Mhm.
the climate. And it's a thing I think there's been a lot of concern about in those countries. And also another like really a product that's really affected by it is lambic. Lambic is also one of my favorite styles. I've been to Brussels only twice in my life, and which was the last 2 years. But I've always drunk lambic and love lambic. But they are also telling their customers and whatnot like the window for making lambic is getting shorter and shorter because you can only make lambic in the winter because in the summer and in the spring and the autumn the bacterial cultures are too big and like they're too intense, if you can say it like
Right.
that, to make the product good. So
And
you
you're talking
need
about
the
you're talking about unblended lambic, right? Just straight
I'm
lambic.
talking about all lambic that's spontaneously fermented. All
Yeah.
lambic that's spontaneously fermented are brewed in the winter season. So as soon as they have a specific temperature at night, they're like, now we're good to brew. So they'll start the brewing season and they'll brew, and then they stop. I think they usually stop around February and these days, but it used to be a much longer period. So they're restricted to a really short period of brewing. And like for lambic, it's interesting because you talked about unblended. So basically, all lambic starts as unblended lambic. You have
Yeah.
your wort that's inoculated in the coolship with the wild yeast, and then it's fermented in a barrel, and then you you have for Goose, it's 1, 2, 3 years in the barrel and whatnot. And then there's the unblended stuff, which is just 1 year fermentation's done in the barrel, serve it like hand pump cask, kind
Yeah.
of like in the UK, which is amazing. Like going there, drinking lambic from cask is fantastic in Brussels and in around the Seine Valley. So that's also something that's affected about it. And now we just ended up talking about like the conversation goes all over the
Mm.
place here. But like, yeah, so we were talking about alcohol-free beer, right?
Yeah. Well, because a few years ago, I paid 100. Actually, I have it right here. Here we go. Back in 2017 or something, I paid like $100 to have this bottle of Cantillon Grand 2 Bruxella imported because this is
Yeah.
unblended lambic. And because when Americans see lambic, it's either fruit lambic like Lindemans or it's a goose. But like the the goose, I don't know, isn't it pronounced Gurza or something? This one?
I think I butchered it as well, but I think it's
Yeah,
Goose.
yeah.
Goose.
Yeah, I would just say
Goose.
goose
Goose. 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 I don't know. There's a good
because
video
what
of Armand, late Armand of Driefonteinen, where he tells people how it's pronounced in Dutch. I think it's slightly different if it's in French
here's all
because
the
it's in two parts.
yeah, but anyway, I paid like $100 for this one bottle of Cantillon.
You don't want to know what I paid for Cantillon obscure releases. I have stuff in my cellar that's a little bit more expensive than that.
uh, here's a opening I was telling you about. I need
Oh
somebody
yeah,
to remake this. This has I just need to update all those the clips.
clips.
This is when I lived in Lakeland, Florida.
Hmm.
This was
That's
what was the date on
but
this?
that's the unblended Cantillon lambic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from what I understand is like they don't really bottle it, like it's tap only.
It's so traditionally it's called jonge lambic or just
Mhm.
lambic, and it's served only on tap from a wooden barrel. Or like if you go to like some places have hand pumps, but if you go to like Decam, it's just a tiny place. He just goes into the back and he has one of his big wooden barrels. He has drilled like a what are they called? Like an opening thing in ventil. I don't know what that's called in English. Oh, great.
Oh,
But
just
like
like a
a butterfly. What is it called when you open? Like you can go to both
spigot?
sides. Butterfly
Oh,
spigot,
okay.
maybe I don't know. Well, he just like he has that drilled into a barrel, and then he just goes there. He opens directly from the barrel and pours it into a jug, and then just serves it for guests. It's uncarbonated. It's flat. It's only 1 year old, and it's amazing. Like that
Yeah.
is what you experience in the countryside there.
It's pretty sour or
It's actually not too bad when it's like the 1 year old. It depends on the blend and the season and everything. Not the blend, the season and the producer.
mhm.
I think there's like lambic is so different. Like for me, the only lambics I think can be too sour often are the ones with raspberries because raspberries can be really sour. But in general, like you will find lambic that is really sour, and you will find lambic that's really funky as well. Like it's so different from producer to producer. And in the last few years, stuff you probably don't see in the states, but there's been a lot of massive research. Like lambic has gotten so much more popular, and there's been a resurgence of loads of nano producers in Belgium making lambic. I think the most famous is Bocke Rider, which is uber hyped. Like the bottles goes for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. But there's many other small nano producers that are making really really good stuff. And
Does your
yeah.
does your brewery do any wild ales?
No, I mean most of our production is focused on clean fermentation so we don't want to risk it really. We've
Yeah.
talked about it and it would be fun, but it would also be a lot to learn. So we would probably have to hire someone who knows already if we were to do something because it's
Yeah.
like so there is a competition in Denmark where you can win brewery of the year. There's basically two competitions, one run by uh, a group called the Danish Beer Enthusiast, which is like a group of consumers where you can have a membership, and then every year you can uh, vote for a brewery you think is best. And then there is one which is industry based, where it's only breweries and bars and bottle shops that can vote. And the company that won this year only makes wild beers called
Nice.
The Observatory. And it's Danish wild beers. Most of the stuff that's been done right now is wild beers that are dry hopped, but they are amazing. They're so good. So like the competition is already really hard. That's also a big part of it. So we can't just like try because making wild beer is actually really difficult as well. Most beer is really difficult if you want to do it really good. Uh, but you can end up with like butyric acid and it will smell like baby poop or puke.
Oh
Like
yeah. I've had
you
that
got
in
to
my
be
homebrew.
careful with that. Oh yeah, there you
That
go.
was
Like
when I
go
moved
ahead.
from New York to Florida. I don't know what it is about like this area, but I kept getting like butyric acid in my home brews. Yeah, and it's like a puke kind of quality. It's really gross. And it's like there's nothing you can really do to fix it. You just have to dump it, you know. I kept losing batches to this, and like I would sanitize the shit out of my equipment, and I don't know where it was coming from. I think it's just like the difference in the air. I don't know because it's more humid here, you know. Maybe
Did you
the
try changing
bacteria
the
floats in
equipment,
the.
like the fermentation bucket?
Hmm?
Did you try the change the fermentation vessel? Like use a brand new one?
Yeah, I used yeah because I sold all my homebrew equipment when I left New York, and I bought all new equipment when I moved down here. But I only had it for a few years. I did make a couple. I got these flip top like mead bottles off somebody on Craigslist for free, and they must have had Brett in them because I remember making a smash saison, just pilsner, and what's that Japanese one, Sriracha Ace, um, just pilsner malt, Sriracha Ace, you know, water, yeast, and then there must have been Brett in the bottles because like after a month or two, I start to get like that bready quality, which I love. I was like, oh, that's a nice bonus flavor. You know, I wasn't even expecting this. It seemed like hardly any American breweries aren't doing Brett anymore. Like the BJCP actually has a style guideline for just Brett beers, but it's like this is the only one that I could find. Is this from Captain Lawrence Brett IPA? Because if you're gonna get wild ale, you're gonna get the bacteria and
Oh yeah. You were thinking like Orval, where it's like
yeah,
Brettanomyces as a forward character. It's not like sour.
yeah.
I think I don't know. There's probably some doing it because
I
you're a
haven't
big
had
country.
Orval in a while. Yeah, because
That's
Orval is like a
amazing
Belgian
beer.
pale ale plus Brett, right?
Yeah, and it's dry hopped with whole cone hops, and I
Do
think
they
it's like
they
East
throw
Kent Golding or
lacto
something.
and any other bacteria in there?
No, it's only Brettanomyces. I think
Only Brett?
it's I can't remember which one it is. I think it might be Bruxellensis. I'm not entirely sure which variety it is, but they put one strain of bread in there, and that's it. And then it does the re-fermentation in the bottle. I think they put in some sugar. Actually went to the brewery a couple of years ago,
It's funny
last year. No, 2 years ago. It was amazing.
in the latest BJCP guidelines, they put they have Orval listed under 30 sorry, I can't see. 34A commercial specialty beer.
Hmm.
And they put Orval and Le Chouffe on here. It says it's basically it says intended as a catch-all location for specific beers that are based on unique commercial examples that don't fit existing styles. So I mean, like Orval would probably be considered a Brett beer, but like that's under American Wild Ale, and obviously it's not American. And Le Chouffe, it depends which Le Chouffe they're talking about, but like the yellow one, Le Chouffe just
Perfect
started
Noir.
canning some of their beers. It's nice seeing. Oh yeah, I was talking with Darwin with this about this the other day. Is um, so is the European brewers they're starting to take on canned beer now. or is it still kind of taboo? Or
I think most brewers have been doing canning for a while, where they've done both formats. Like you said, La Chouffe or Delirium, they're both in cans and bottles, but it
Mhm.
depends on the market. Like in Denmark, most of the classic Belgian stuff we get is in bottles. But if you go to Belgium or France or Netherlands or whatever, a lot of it will be in cans and it will be cheaper. But it's funny because a lot of people also have a bit of a nostalgia for some of these classic like Belgian beers, but some of them come from massive breweries these days. Like Delirium is not a small brewery, and La Chouffe is not a small brewery. Like I haven't drunk those beers in years, and I wonder if they still hold up and if they're as good. But like, it'd be fun to revisit them. Like, it's just I know the size of some of those breweries now. Like, I think in America, because you're a bit distanced, it's like, oh, it's this small Abbey brewery in Belgium. It's like, no, you remember
Yeah.
Grimbergen, for example? You remember that
Yeah.
brand? It's
Yeah,
owned by Carlsberg now.
aren't they owned by the same company that owns Ommegang and Boulevard and Le Chouffe?
No, no. So they were owned by Alkenmaas, and Alkenmaas was a big conglomerate Belgian brewer, and they were bought by Newcastle, and Newcastle was bought by Heineken, but some of
Yeah.
the rights of some products were bought by Carlsberg. So Carlsberg bought the rights for Grimbergen all over the world besides Belgium. So their Heineken has the rights to the brand, which is weird, and it's brewed in France, Poland, Belgium, Denmark, all over Europe. And it is the furthest you'll ever get from like real Trappist ale, like
Yeah.
Vale or something like that. But they're doing their best to market this as this is brewed by monks. This is the beer for connoisseurs.
Well,
It's they're big marketing on that.
that's like
Like
Saint Bernardus too. Like this has a
yeah,
priest right on the bottle, but like this isn't made by monks. It's a commercial brewery.
yeah, but a really good one. Bernardus is still, I think, one of the ones that also still hold up. But like the fun thing with the whole Grimbergen stuff is how like also if you look at the ingredients, it's just got like numbers and certified color and all this stuff. But people just love it, and it's become this thing where like people who don't know anything about a beer, that's the beer they will go for if they want something fancy at a bar. And they most people don't know it's Carlsberg. People think it's an abbey from Belgium that sells the beer in Denmark,
Mhm.
and it's just really good marketing. And Carlsberg has been really that's one of the things like you're really seeing in Denmark and Europe right now is craft washing. Like the big breweries are really trying to be like, oh, we're hip, we're craft, where it's like it's the wolf in sheep's clothing, and then like what happens next? Like, whoop, they snatch up another
Yeah.
brewery, or like
Isn't
it's crazy.
is it doesn't Carlsberg own Pilsner Urquell? Or is that Sapporo?
I do not know.
I
I
know it's one
don't
of those
think
big
so.
breweries.
It's probably
Or
Carlsberg
is
has
it
so
I think
many
it's
brands.
InBev, isn't it? Yeah, I think
InBev
InBev.
also has a lot of brands.
Yeah. I know. So, like, I can't even keep track because there's, like, like, there's Molson Coors, there's also Miller Coors, and then there's AB InBev, and, like,
But
didn't
didn't
those guys.
Molson Coors so there was Coors and then there
Yeah.
was Miller, right?
Yeah.
Or was it Molson Coors? Didn't they merge at some point?
Yeah. It's weird. There's Miller Coors and there's Molson Coors. I don't get it.
Maybe it's a subsidiary, one of them. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's so hard to keep track. Anyway, so how many years have you been a professional brewer now?
Um, 7 or 8 years,
Oh, okay.
something like
Now,
that.
when you became a full-time brewer, did you ever consider quitting the channel? Because like, is there like a like, you ever have like a hesitation, like, because I'm a brewer and like if I trash another brewer, if I say this beer is awful, I don't want them to like make a
Yeah,
video trashing one of my videos or like you're
yeah,
only
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
if you like it, like it's worth posting, you know?
Yeah, I think I definitely thought about it, and I think when I started going commercial, I actually had a chat with Jacob from a very renowned
Mhm,
Danish brewery called Amager Bryghus. Amager, if we
mm.
speak English. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of them. They are still one of the more famous Danish breweries. And he was like, "You've always been the master of puppets. You shouldn't stop doing it." He was like, "Fuck what everyone else thinks." And you can say what you want, but you can also say it nicely. And it's like you can rate beer without being a dick. Like
Yeah,
you can say things honestly. But I've also at one point thought about taking out ratings, but people are like they really want the ratings.
yeah.
So like I don't know. So far nothing has really bitten me in the ass with both doing the videos and doing commercial brewing. But I think it's because a lot of people also respect my opinion because I
Yeah,
actually know what I'm talking about. Like I'm not just some dude who had 5 beers and then he gives it a two on Untappd. Like I actually have a
yeah,
little bit of merit to what I'm saying. So I think some people appreciate it, but I've also heard the other story where people are like you can't do that when you're a pro brewer. It's like
yeah.
yeah. So I think
I could
there's
see.
two sides to the
Yeah,
coin.
yeah. Especially like if you run into one of those brewers at a convention or something. Like, well, I heard you thought my beer was awful. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, most brewers don't try to make awful beer. Like
Yeah,
brewing is not an easy job, especially if you're in a microbrewery, it's a craft brewery, whatever. Like most of the operations are quite small, so it's a lot of work and it's a lot of hours, and it's also hard work, like with lifting and everything. So everyone is trying to do their best, and a lot of people have a lot of passion. Like it's not an industry where you get into it just to have a job. It's like an industry where most people get into it because they really are into it
yeah,
and they're
yeah,
willing to go that extra mile. And that's why I think there's also been a lot of this talk about unionizing in the states and whatnot, because a lot of bigger breweries and whatnot has also used that. Like they know people are passionate, so they're willing to work that extra mile and not getting the benefits. And that I think that's a very good discussion that's been going in the states, which has not really been so much a thing in Europe. But yeah, and we have a whole different situation here. Pay here in general is also better and whatnot, especially in Denmark.
I was trying to find this picture, but I can't find it. When I first moved to Lakeland, well, when I moved to Florida, um, like one of the little microbreweries there, it's just called Lakeland Brewing, and I met like a I started like a local meetup beer, like I think it was called like Lakeland Craft Beer Enthusiast or whatever, just on Meetup.com, and we met at this brewery, and like I got a flight of their beers, and like they were all awful. And I was like getting diacetyl and acetaldehyde, like name it, you name it, all those off flavors that were in there. And I had a blog too, and like I trashed them on my blog, and like they actually were like tweeting back at me like, "No, our beers don't have this in there." I'm like, "Yes, they do." And they put a sign up on the bar. I had like a picture of me. They just like grabbed off my blog, and it said, "If you see this guy, let us know." Like they wanted to like fight me or something because I trashed their beers. Well, the joke's on them because their brewery went out of business. So
Maybe there
I think,
was something to it. Who knows?
yeah, that's why like I don't know. I kind of like being on the outside. I kind of like being more the critic, because I mean I used to homebrew. I haven't homebrewed in like 7 years, and actually after I left, when I first left IT when I lived in New York, this was like 8 years ago. I actually applied to a bunch of breweries. Even, like, Two Roads in Connecticut, I think they actually make McKellar's or Evil Twin stuff, or they used
They
to.
used to, yeah.
Yeah. I actually applied to become a brewer there, but it was paying, like, next to nothing. It was paying, like, $12 an hour. I was like, "Well, I can make double or triple that doing what I'm doing now," you know? So, I mean, it's like it's kinda yeah, it's like what you're saying. It's like it's an industry for people that are really passionate about it. It's like if you love beer enough that you're gonna, like, work, for barely over minimum wage, or then you like probably have a weekend job too. I mean, it's hard to because like and also it's there's probably so many people competing for like so little slots, and there's a lot of downsizing happening right now. Like they said the news, I follow the beer industry news like as much as I can, but not super closely. Like I have a Google news alerts email that I get every morning, just kind of see what's going on. And like all these articles I read about 2023, it said it was the worst year for beer in like a quarter century. Like beer sales were down like across the board. Like so many breweries went out of business. Um, I mean, trying to like account for that is like there's so many variables that could account for that. But has the beer industry taken a hit over there too, or is it just here?
Yeah. Quickly first about the whole job thing and working for like lower wages and stuff. I think like that's like something that I like that's being addressed in the States because you should not work for a lower wage if you're great at what you do. Like
Mhm.
if you're a great brewer, you deserve a great salary. And I think that's awesome to see people fighting for now. But because it shouldn't, because you shouldn't exploit people who are passionate about what they do. Like you can give them a lower paycheck because they're passionate. I think that's bullcrap, to be honest. And that's what I think has been a little bit of a problem in the industry, and in some places, maybe not so much where I've been located, luckily enough. But in terms of the industry, I think right now, and you're talking about downsizing and all this, this is because it's been a perfect storm. Uh, the whole COVID situation, the crisis in Ukraine,
Hmm.
cost of living, it's a perfect storm for this kind of thing
Yeah.
where of course breweries will go out of business, and I think we're going to see a lot more breweries going out of business. And I think we're going to see it's still a down, you know, sizing of breweries and whatnot. We're going to see less breweries, and not that I think it's a positive thing, but I think basically what's going to happen is like a lot of the breweries that probably wouldn't make it anyway in the long run, they're going to be washed out through all this. And what's going to be back is like somewhat more of the higher quality breweries. And that's in some way a positive, but it's also, really scary to see. And you're seeing it here. Like people are closing their doors and people are like one thing that surprised me like crazy was one of the best new Danish breweries called Hazy Bear Brewing. They ended up closing. They were only open a couple of years, and they were like on track to become one of the best breweries in Denmark. But then, because of their financial situation starting under COVID, it was just like, nope. And also, some other circumstances played into that. Some unlucky things with health, but yeah, I think it's a bit of a perfect storm, and I think we're going to see more closures, unfortunately. And like I'm all for variety, and I'm all for like markets having like access to all these kind of awesome beers, but like there's also so much growth. Like you can't have an industry that where it's just like growth, 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 growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eventually, the bubble's gonna burst. And I think I remember Greg Cook talking about this years ago, like how we're close to the bubble bursting. I think now is when we're close to the bubble bursting. It's not burst yet; it's starting to leak. But
Yeah.
I think we're gonna get a point where there's gonna be a like as a lot of brewers are looking at downsizing, uh, you know, uh, breweries closing, and people looking at like where are we selling beer? Should we sell locally? Should we export? Like because you can also see export markets. At one point, it's like it didn't matter where in the world you brewed beer. If it was good enough, just send it out. But now you're seeing people are saying, "Oh, it's more expensive to buy a beer that's from overseas." So we're going to stop
Yeah.
doing that and buy more local. So I think what's also going to happen through this is beer is going to be more localized again. So we're going to have this like thing where people are going to be maybe more in tune to drinking local because of the situation, which is a positive. But in general, it is really scary times, especially also if you like working in the industry. You don't want to lose your job because of this.
Yeah.
But
Even
fortunately, we're in a good position at the moment.
I
So
would say here in Florida, the beer culture like isn't as good or like educated as it was up in New York. I mean, we have like a lot of big craft breweries like Cigar City and Funky Buddha here, but then there's also lots of just microbrews of basically, like or they're basically like their own bars that just brew their own beer. Like they don't really have a lot of food or other drinks, and they don't really bottle or can stuff, or they're like a restaurant that has their own beer, and I don't know. It's like there's still plenty of little places like that. I think a lot of those that are only making like okay stuff will probably go out of business in the next few years. Like, is there still like in Denmark or Europe in general? There's probably a lot of that kind of stuff. It's like just a brewery like just for that one town, or just for that one
yeah,
city block.
yeah, like a brewery that's the only merit it has for existence is that it's local. We
Mhm.
have a lot of that, like small breweries that are there just because locals will support them. Some of them will survive, but like I think there's also going to be a little bit of a downsizing in that. But there's yeah, we have loads of that. Loads of
Yeah.
brewery, which is just a city name and then brewery, like or
Mhm.
an area name and then brewery, or Humboldt, which means craft brew or hand brewed. Often it's like nano brewers, like home
Does
brewers who
your
are trying to go pro.
does your brewery can and bottle, or is it tap only?
It's canning and kegs. We use mainly key kegs
Mhm.
because it's easiest for distribution when you don't have a big distribution network and whatnot. But otherwise, it's mainly cans. But we are looking to do bottle filling for special barrel age releases. We have a barrel program that's getting more and more extensive, and we've started to, speaking of costs,
Mhm.
import more exclusive barrels of spirits from the states, uh, which is just like because we love those kind of beers. So yeah, we're looking to probably soon, hopefully, buy something to. It's going to be hand bottled, I think, because we're a 2-man operation or 2.5.
Mhm.
So we're also quite small. A lot of people always, when they go to a breweries and they see them on tanks and barrels, and we're like, "You're only 2 people doing this?" It's like, "Yep."
Really?
um,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
What's the brew house size?
20 hectoliters. So I'm in
Mm.
Europe, so it's everything's hectoliters. I don't know how much that is in barrels.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Let's
Well,
see.
if you want to send me some to review, I'll be more than happy to. I have a bunch of beers that Brett from I don't know if you've heard of Urban Artifact. They're kind of like one of the avant-garde sour, kettle sour, fruited sour beers. Like everything they make is a kettle sour, like with some kind of fruit and spice. It's I wish the BJCP would make a style just for this because this is what a lot of people are doing now.
Yeah.
They're not. It's not
Yeah,
like a
yeah, it's
lambic
separate.
where it's spontaneously fermented. It's just
And it's also not
kettle
like a
sour.
Berliner Weisse. Yeah, it's not, and it's not like Berliner Weisse because it's much more
Yeah.
bold than a classic Berliner Weisse. But in terms of our production, our brew house is 16 barrels. And I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
that's like very standard for like a lot of the smaller
Yeah.
American
It's like a
ones.
microbrewery.
Yeah.
It's funny. I get most of my beer online now from this app Tavor. I plug it in all my beer reviews, but it's like
Do you
basically
want to hear
whatever
something
there's.
crazy? I've
Yeah.
used Tabor.
You have they ship out
Yeah.
there or when you were here?
No, no. When I was at home here, because I would have a friend of mine in California would just use his address, and then I was able to get some exclusive stuff on on
Oh,
Tabor
okay.
because I was
And
like a
he would ship
Tabor.
it from
Yeah, he would
California to
ship
you.
it from California to me. Uh, but I
Cool.
stopped that. Like I did so much beer trading and chasing hype, and I still do a little bit once in a while. But what's crazy, which also speaks loads of the situation, a lot of the big hype names, they're starting to get distribution sporadically in Europe, like side projects, barrel aged stouts and stuff like that. They are for sale in Europe once in a while. We just got a huge hit. Also, Florida beer, Three Sons,
Mhm.
massive hit of Sons beers, some different Anchorage beers, like all these massive, hyped, super highly rated barrel aged beers, and they're distributed in Europe right now. And I think
Can you
that
get
that speaks of the U.S., the saturated market in the U.S. too.
you can probably get Bourbon County over there, right?
No, that's the weird
Oh,
thing.
really?
That's by Budweiser. I think
Mhm.
every couple of years there is a release, but it's been a long time since it's been over.
Hmm. It's
It's
funny because I
also
can go to the
limited.
beer museum down the road, and, they still have 2019 bottles sitting on the shelf at standard prices. It's like $14, which is kind of expensive for 1 bottle, but, it's also 500
They're
mil, and it's like
when they've
15%.
when they've been for sale in Europe, they've been closer to like 45, $40.
Wow.
So, but people buy them because people know their reputation and everything. So,
Are there any beers still left on your bucket list? Because 'Cause I'm sure you've had, Pliny, Westy 12, things like that. You've probably had them all by now. Is there anything you still
I
haven't
mean,
had yet? You
I've chased so much hype. I think my biggest white whale was right original, like in recent time, was Side Project's Beer Barrel Time, and I've had that numerous times since, and that's just, I think, the peak of barrel aged beer in spirit barrels
Mhm.
without adjuncts. But like, what right now I really think is what I want to do bucket list wise is visit the breweries. Like, I don't feel like too much, it's chasing too much anymore. Once in a while, I'll do a trade, or I'll try and get a hold of some hype lambic. For example, I got some limited stuff from Cantillon. For example, something called Vinsanto, which is made with a specific dessert wine grape from Italy, which is like made especially for a winery, and you can only drink it at the Cantillon brewery. But I managed to get a bottle anyhow. I think that's one of the last times I really chased something. But otherwise, it's like going to the places. Like I think that's one of the big bucket list things, and I think that more beer geeks should do that. Like, because it's also, especially if you're a hype beer geek that want to chase hype, it's going to be cheaper for you to visit the
Yeah.
country most of the
I
times
definitely want
and
to
drink a lot of the
go on a
beers there.
trip. Yeah, I want to go to England and Belgium and Germany, and I need somebody who speaks the language though. Most people speak English over there though, if I remember
Yeah, yeah.
correctly.
I mean, you can find so much help online. Most of these legendary beer places have Facebook groups with people that are more than happy to help. Like we
Yeah.
were in last time we were in when I was in Bamberg. We
Mhm.
were I've been there many times, so I was kind of the guide. We were at a trade fair for brewing, which is in Nuremberg, and then we were staying in Bamberg, and we were walking around the city touring all these breweries. And then I was also shooting like a tour video for the channel. And then we were at a brewery called the Kiesmann, and then I could hear some people talking in the background. It's like, hey, that's that guy from YouTube, Master Hopkins. And then it turned out it was some Americans who was there for the trade fair alongside a British guy who lived there. And it was a British guy who then knew the channel. And turns out he is one of the administrators of a big group about Franconian beer. And he was like, we were wanting to visit a brewery called Ballweiss Sintner, which makes some of the best lagers. He's like, I kind of know the brewmaster, so I can probably get you a tour, personal tour. It's just like, are you serious? Like those are the real bucket list experiences when you meet people,
Yeah.
you hang out, you have so much in common, you're interested in the same things, you geek out, you eat great food, drink great beer. Those are the experiences I think are I cherish the most these days compared to cracking a hype bottle. Like I think beer is always best shared. Like I've had a big thing with having people on the channel for many years because I think it's fun to talk about beer with people instead of just like sitting on your own. It's fun to sit and
Yeah.
analyze, but it's most fun when it's social.
Yeah. All right, we've been going a long time, almost 2 hours.
Yeah,
This seems like a good place to wrap. So
yeah, that's a
I'll
good
put
finishing
links
thought.
to all Peter's stuff in the description. As I always said, I mean, if you can watch to the end of a 10-minute beer review, you're awesome. But if you can watch to the end of a 2-hour podcast, you're super awesome. By the way, this show is available as an audio podcast. If you don't want to watch it, you can listen to it in the car or whatever. So just check any Spotify, Apple, any of those. Chad's Beer Podcast is on there. I'm trying to think of a more clever name, but it's like everything I do is just Chad's whatever. In the retrospect, I wish I had called this show beer review journal, like peer review journal, like
But Chad's is your thing, man.
I know, but
I
that's
remember you from being Chad. Chad's
yeah,
beer review.
that's a nickname that I started in high school, like back in the 90s, probably before you were even born.
Maybe I was
Yeah.
from 1990, so maybe I was a baby.
Mhm. All right. Well, that's about it. So if you watched or listened all the way in, you're awesome. Thanks to Peter for joining, and I'm sure we will collab again sometime soon. So thanks for doing the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.